You need to stop guessing your color grading. The reason your videos don't look cinematic has nothing to do with your camera. It's because you don't understand what you're actually doing inside these tools. Every time you move a slider, you're hoping it looks better instead of knowing what it's doing. That stops today. I break down color grading in CapCut properly so you understand what every tool does, why it matters, and how to actually use it to get that clean cinematic result. We're going to take a flat log footage and turn it into a fully graded image step by step using scopes, curves, color wheels, LUTs, HSL, everything you see on screen. By the end of this, you'll actually understand color grading instead of copying settings. I'm Dina and I'm here to help you master CapCut the easy way. Let's jump in. Alright, let's start with this clip. This was shot in Apolog and you can see straight away it looks very flat, very grey and honestly a bit lifeless. Now if we compare this to a normal footage is already processed. It has contrast, saturation, sharpness, everything baked in. Log footage is the opposite. It strips all of that away and the reason for that is control. When your camera bakes everything in, you're stuck with it. If highlights are blown out, colors look off, you can't really fix it properly. But with log footage, nothing is baked in. That means we can decide how bright, how contrasty, or how colorful that image should be. That's why log footage gives you more control when grading, not because it looks better straight away, but because it gives you more information to work with. So before we do anything else, we need to convert this into a normal looking image. We're not styling yet, we're just bringing it back to its natural baseline. Go to Adjust, then LUT, and import your LUT. This is called a conversion LUT. It takes log footage and converts it into Rec. 709, which is basically the standard look you see on screens. I'm applying our Apple log to Rec. 709 LUT here, and straight away you can see we have contrast, color, and a much more usable image. This is not a creative look, it's just a technical correction. We've linked this LUT for free in the description if you want to follow along exactly. You can find this log in our starter pack. I'm gonna link that below. Before touching any sliders, we need to understand the scopes, and you'll see 3 graphs appear underneath your image. I know this looks complicated, but this is actually one of the most powerful tools in color grading because instead of guessing with your eyes, this shows you exactly what's happening in your image. Go up to Color Oscilloscope and click Show, just right here. Let's start with the middle graph. Watch what happens when I move through the footage. You can see the graph is literally moving with the image. That's because this is the direct representation of the brightness and the color data of what we're seeing right now. From bottom to top, this represents brightness. The bottom is pure black. The top is pure white. So anything lower down is shadows and anything higher up is highlight. If you look at the image, the brighter areas like the face or light sources sit higher on the graph and the darker areas like the background sit lower. You'll also notice red, green and blue all combined 3. These 3 colors make up the entire image. Now watch what happens when I increase the highlights. You can see the top of the graph stretches upwards, which makes sense because we're making the bright parts brighter. If I lift the shadows, you'll see the bottom of the graph rise because we're brightening the darker areas. This is what we use to control exposure properly instead of guessing. Now let's look at the graph on the left. This is called the RGB parade. The difference here is that instead of stacking all the colors together, it separates them into red, green and blue. If I scrub through the footage again, you can see the movement matches what's happening in the image, but now each color channel is displayed individually. This is extremely useful for fixing color balance. If one channel is higher than the others, your image has a color cast. For example, if blue is higher than red and green, your image will look cooler. If red is higher, it will look warmer. So this is what we use when correcting white balance and overall color balance. Now the third one is the vectorscope, and this one works differently because it doesn't show brightness at all. It shows colors. Each direction represents a color like red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, and yellow. The further the signal moves away from the center, the more saturated that color is. If everything stays close to the center, your image is desaturated. If it spreads outwards, your colors are stronger. You'll also notice this line here, just right here, this one, which is the skin tone line. Ideally, skin tones should sit along this line, so when we're grading, we can use this to keep skin tones natural instead of guessing. So to simplify this, use the waveform to control brightness and exposure, use the RGB parade to fix color balance, and use the vectorscope to control saturation and keep colors accurate. Once you understand this, you're no longer guessing, you're actually reading your image. Now let's go into the adjustment panel. You'll see we have multiple tabs here: basic, HSL, curves, color wheels, and masks. We're not going to cover masks in this video, but we're going to go through the first four properly so you understand how color grading actually works instead of just copying settings. We always start with the basic panel because this is where we fix the image and build a proper foundation before touching any colors. Exposure controls the overall brightness, so I'm adjusting this until the image feels balanced and the waveform sits nicely within range. Contrast controls the difference between light and dark. Too much contrast looks harsh, too little looks flat, so we keep this controlled. Highlights control the brightest parts of the image, like the sky or light sources. I usually bring this down slightly to recover detail. Shadows control the darker areas. Lifting this slightly helps bring back information in the image without making it look washed out. Now, whites and blacks are where we define the actual limits of the image. Whites control how bright the brightest part can go, and blacks control how deep the darkest parts go. This is what gives your image proper depth and separation. I usually push whites up slightly and bring blacks down just a bit to create a clean contrast range. And then we have brilliance. This one is a bit different. It mainly affects the midtones and how detailed or crisp the image feels. Increasing it can make the image pop a bit more, but if you push it too far, it can start to look unnatural. So again, keep it subtle. This entire step is critical because if your exposure and contrast are not correct here, nothing you do later with color will look right. Now we fix the white balance. Temperature shifts the image between warm and cool, and tint corrects green or magenta shifts. At this stage, we're not creating a look yet, we're just making the image look natural and balanced. Now we bring color back into the image. Saturation increases the intensity of all colors, but this is where most beginners go wrong. If you push this too far, it instantly looks unrealistic, so keep it subtle and controlled. Now we move to HSL, which stands for hue, saturation, and luminance. This allows us to control individual colors instead of the entire image. Hue changes the actual color, saturation controls how strong that color is, and luminance controls how bright that color is. For example, I can adjust the blues by slightly shifting the hue, increasing the saturation, and lowering the luminance to create a richer sky. This is where you start shaping your look instead of just fixing the image. Now let's go into curves, which gives us much more precise control over the image. This graph here represents brightness, with shadows on the left, midtones in the middle, and highlights on the right. I am going to create a slight S curve by pulling the shadows down and pushing the highlights up. just like that. This increases contrast, but in a much more controlled and natural way than using the contrast slider. The reason this works so well is because you're adjusting different parts of the image separately instead of applying one global change. Now, if we switch to the individual RGB channels, we can control color in a much more advanced way. For example, if I go into the blue channel and lift the shadows, I'm adding blue into the darker areas. If I adjust the highlights in the opposite direction, I can introduce warmth. This is how cinematic color contrast is created, by separating colors between shadows and highlights. Now let's move into the color wheels. And this is where you really start shaping the mood of your image. Let's build a cinematic look. The most common one is teal and orange. You'll see two types here, primary wheels and log wheels. They might look similar, but they behave very differently, and understanding the difference is key. We start in the primary wheels. These are divided into shadows, midtones, and highlights. Shadows affect the darker parts of the image. Midtones affect the middle range, and highlights affect the brightest area. So instead of adjusting the whole image like we did before, now we can target specific ranges. Each wheels lets you push color into that part of the image. So if I take the shadows and push them slightly toward teal, just like that, you can see the darker areas of the image start picking up that color. And if I push the highlights slightly towards warm tones, you start getting that contrast between cool shadows and warm highlights, which is the base of most cinematic looks. But here's something really important. The primary wheels are quite strong. When you push color into the shadows, you're not just affecting the shadows, you're also affecting the blacks. That means your blacks are no longer truly black, they start looking tinted or washed. So this is where the log wheels come in. These are much more precise and subtle. Instead of affecting large areas, they let you fine-tune very specific ranges of that image. Now, if I switch to the log wheels and adjust the shadows here, I can keep that teal tone but bring back proper black levels so the image still has depth. This gives you much more control and a cleaner result. At the same time, always keep an eye on skin tones. You want them to stay natural and not drift too far into orange or green. So the way you want to think about this is that primary wheels are for setting the overall look quickly, and log wheels are for refining it and fixing the details. And while doing all of this, always keep an eye on your skin tones. You want to make sure that they stay natural, don't drift too far to orange or green, especially when you're pushing strong color into the shadows. Now let's talk about LUTs and filters. LUT stands for lookup table, and it's essentially a preset that remaps the colors in your image. We use LUTs to speed up the process and create consistent looks across multiple clips. Instead of building everything from scratch, you can apply a LUT and then refine it. CapCut also has built-in filters which are quick and easy to use. They can give you a fast result, but they are not as flexible as manual grading. So think of these LUTs and filters as shortcuts and manual grading as full control. You can find LUTs on platforms like Motion Array, or you can create your own. We've created our own LUT pack called the Urban Cinematic LUT Pack, designed specifically for the urban city life look. I'll leave the link in the description for you. To import a LUT in CapCut, go to Adjust, then LUT. Import your file. I'll apply one here so you can see the difference and how it enhances the image once the base grade is already solid. On the right side panel, you can adjust the strength of the LUT to control how intense the effect is. And you can always fine-tune it further using all the tools we went through earlier. Now for filters, go to the Filters tab on the left side panel and browse through the options until you find something you like. If you want to save one, just click this star icon and it will appear in your favorites, which makes it much quicker to access later. These are all the ones I've saved. they give a really nice cinematic feel without being too heavy. Just like with LUTs, you can adjust the strength on the right side using the slider, so you're not stuck with the default look and can dial it in exactly how you want it. The most important thing to understand about LUTs and filters is that they don't replace color correction. Everything we did in the basic panel comes first, no exceptions. That step is what's called color correction, and it's non-negotiable. If your image isn't properly balanced there, no LUT or filter is going to fix it. They're only there to enhance the look, not to correct it. Let's look at the full transformation. This is the original footage, and this is the final graded result. Same clip, completely different image. Now you've seen the full process from start to finish, from fixing exposure and color balance all the way to building a proper cinematic look using curves, color wheels, LUTs and filters. If you take the time to actually understand these tools instead of copying settings, your videos will instantly stand out from most creators. If you want to speed up your workflows, grab the free Apple Look to Rec. 709 LUT in the description. And if you want ready-made cinematic looks, check out our Urban Cinematic LUT pack as well. If this helped you, subscribe for more CapCut tutorials like this so you don't miss what's coming next. Now go create something awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.